I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We have a terrific show for you tonight, including a look at what happens next now that an appellate court has stopped Oregon's plan for carbon emission limits, and your feedback on the Columbia Sportswear CEO's offer to help clean up the trash and graffiti around Portland. But we're going to start with the departure of the FBI leader for Oregon. Kieran Ramsey is being promoted and heading back to Washington, D.C. So tonight we'll hear what he thinks are Oregon's biggest threats for the future. That is our big story tonight. When folks in high-profile positions leave, it gives us a great chance to look back at their tenure to see how it went and how far we've come towards solving some of the big problems. When it comes to the leader of the FBI for Oregon, that does cover a lot of territory. Kieran Ramsey is from the East Coast, from Boston, I believe, and arrived in Portland as the special agent in charge for Oregon in January of 2021, basically 3 years ago. Earlier this week, I had a chance to sit down with him for a 30-minute discussion on the challenges that he found when he got to Oregon and the challenges we still face as a state.
So when we think about, as I first got here, we had significant issues with gun and gang violence. The fact that we weren't all even talking about the same issue or in the same way was a huge concern. And there was, a lot of inability by team law enforcement writ large, not just the FBI, to do something about it.
Portland dismantled its gang enforcement team.
Yep, but I think Portland police have made tremendous strides, and they're doing, the lion's share of the work at this point. But one of the first things we were able to get off the ground as I got here was the Metro Safe Streets Task Force, which was really the first comprehensive effort with federal, state, and local authorities to come together and say, okay, we have a major gun violence issue here. A lot of it is driven by gang violence. What are we doing about it? And that's come really a long way since we started. And as you look at the stats right now, homicides are down around 30%. Shootings are down again around 30%. All shootings told, about 12% are related to gang activity or gang adjacent. Those are numbers that we're seeing that are trending in the right direction. Admittedly, it's no reason for celebratory, slaps on the back and, hey, we did it, or anybody to take credit for anything yet. But the numbers are trending in the right direction, and it needs to continue.
Well, we wanted to take a look at those numbers for ourselves and found that indeed Portland did see a dramatic rise in violence during 2021. And also it does appear to be getting a bit better. Let's take a look at the shooting incidents. According to Portland police, there were 413 shootings in 2019, then 919 in 2020, and 1,315 in 2021. It dropped slightly in 2022 to 1,309, and the numbers are not all in yet for this year. But if we look at January to October comparisons by year, also from Portland police, you can see the steady climb in shooting incidents from 2019 through 2022, and then it fell 21% this year from last, if you're just looking through those January through October timeframes. Homicides in Portland following a similar path, moving up from 57 in 2020 to then 88 people killed in 2021, and then 97 in 2022. That was a record. And then back down to 77 so far this year. So it is clear he arrived as gun violence was really taking off and getting extreme in the Portland area. Of course, that was during the pandemic as well, and lots of other cities around the country were having big-time challenges like we did, which of course does not excuse what happened here. I think it's also interesting that it apparently took the FBI leader for Oregon to pull everyone together for a coordinated attack on this problem. I asked what made the difference behind the scenes. Ramsey said in the beginning, it was political leaders not supporting Portland police.
But we needed the backing of elected officials at even the local level. And I think we've come really a long ways from where there were even, issues of the inability for, let's say, the city to really have good comms and good collaboration with the FBI. That's gone away. I mean, I have great relationships with the city council, with the mayor. He's been to my office a number of times. I think everybody understands what the problem is and what we need to do about it, and be it, through Multnomah County DA's office or Sheriff's office or Gresham, or even our surrounding county partners, and between ourselves and the ATF and others, everybody understands that this amount of gun violence for Portland or for the metro region has to be stopped. It has to turn around, and I think I'm hopeful we're on the right track.
I've been here 33 years. There's always been some sort of a gang violence problem. What makes this different?
Well, back 3 years ago, people weren't even allowed to acknowledge that it was a gang violence issue, which was astounding to me. And I use the term gang not as a prejudicial or a pejorative term, and I understand that there are people in the community that feel it is a prejudicial and pejorative term, but it's written into federal law, and that's in fact what it was. I mean, we had plenty of folks telling us, no, this is gang violence. I think also when we took a step towards the community, there are a number of great organizations out there like Love is Stronger and March Against Murder and all these other organizations that were trying to do something from the grassroots level. And we actually stepped towards them and said, hey, what do you think? What can we do to partner with you? How can we help this situation? Recognizing historically, perhaps our office wasn't a partner with them. And I think that's turned around tremendously at this point.
And with that, we moved on to big picture threats in Oregon. As the special agent in charge of the FBI for the state, Ramsey is aware of a lot of threats that most of us don't see in our day-to-day lives. So I asked him, what are the top 3 threats in our area?
So right off the top, cybercrime. It continues to plague the entire U.S. It really plagues globally everybody. But you know, the fact is we have some very big, important companies here in the state of Oregon. They are being targeted every day. We have a lot of public sector entities that are being targeted, and then we have everybody else. And when we think about things like ransomware that continues to hit us here in Oregon and how busy our cyber team is here, it's really you know, something that is not going away anytime soon, and is going to continue to really take up a lot of bandwidth. And really require a lot of expertise so that we're effectively combating it here. Again, not just in Oregon, but around the entire country.
And you probably know what he's talking about. You've probably experienced the fallout in the last year with notification that maybe some of your information was hacked somewhere. I'm one of the millions who had to change my Xfinity password after the company announced this week that hackers got access to the personal information of as many as 36 million of us customers. Lovely. Let's move on to threat number 2.
Number 2, you know, I use the term domestic terrorism, but I understand that's a very weighty term. But that anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists. You know, we can go back to the summer of 2020 and remember what we saw there. And I'm not talking about the thousands of people that protested lawfully, that exercised their First Amendment protected activities in a very lawful, legitimate way. I'm talking about those, you know, hundreds of people that sought to hijack that entire thing by looting, by committing arson, by assaulting police officers, and continuing to do it today. You know, for whatever the flashpoint is, you know, they'll take whatever issue they can and then seek to destroy, seek to disrupt, seek to hurt people and businesses through serious violent criminal conduct.
Is that unique in Oregon?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily unique, but Oregon has pretty much every type of character within this umbrella. We have, again, on the one side, the anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists. On the other, we have this racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists. So you can think of the extreme left and the extreme right. They're all here in Oregon. And unfortunately, we see activity by those 2 types all around the state, but certainly here in the metro area. And that is going to continue to concern us all. I think as we come into this 2024 election cycle, the concern that we all have, and I say team law enforcement, let alone the FBI, in terms of political violence, the threat of political violence is pretty significant. When we just look at the rhetoric that we see out there, be it in the media or in social media, the rhetoric continues to get more specific, and it continues to increase its calls for violence. That's concerning.
Definitely something to keep in mind for all of us. Finally, for the third big danger facing Oregon, it's hate crimes. Ramsey says they are happening and they are not being reported.
The big problem, though, is we're just not seeing the reporting of them, because we know so many people are intimidated or afraid or worried about coming forward to law enforcement. And that's something that we've worked on extensively. Even right now as we sit here, we have an entire ad campaign running through PDX Airport with billboards, as well as billboards down in Eugene and Medford area. Again, we partner with Oregon Department of Justice's bias hotline and our partners, again, across the state, but unfortunately we know that underreporting of hate crimes continues.
And that is a problem because it allows the hate crimes to continue themselves, maybe even grow. And that's bad for everyone. Ramsey says he's enjoyed his time in Oregon, and when he retires in the not so distant future, he plans to return and settle down here. As far as who will replace him in the head of the FBI for our area, we don't know. Has not been yet announced. We would love to hear your thoughts on our outgoing interview with Special Agent in Charge Ramsey. What do you think about things he had to say, especially about the threats that we are facing here in our state? Shoot us an email, will you? Or actually send is probably a better word. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. Now let's get to some of your thoughts on a segment from yesterday regarding graffiti and trash removal along some of Portland's busiest roads. Columbia Sportswear CEO Tim Boyle has pledged a couple $100,000 to the Oregon Department of Transportation. They would then bring in contractors to clean up the graffiti and pick up trash, since ODOT says it's out of money to do that work on their own. I also gave you my opinion on all this last night. I gotta say, it bothers me that it takes the leader of a private company to step forward and make a difference in how our city looks. It may be a bit old-fashioned on my part, but I expect our government to do that with our tax money. Make the city safe, fill the potholes, and clean the place up. Anyway, many of you agreed with me. Some of you did not, which is fine. We'll share those comments as well. But let's start with this one from a longtime Portland resident who is obviously fed up.
I'm 68 years old, born and raised in Portland, Oregon, and I've never seen such an absolute mess in my entire life. And I'm so sick and tired of the city of Portland, Multnomah County, Oregon Department of Transportation always saying they never have enough money to operate. Where in the hell is our tax money going? Why is it only Multnomah County that can't seem to get their together and get this problem taken care of?
All right, thanks for your comment. That's the question that many are wondering, I think. There was one main theme behind many of the comments last night, and let me tell you, there were a lot of them.
Regarding graffiti removal and Mr. Doyle paying for it, it might last 24 hours to 48 hours before the graffiti people come back and graffiti again on fresh paint. What are we doing to catch and contain graffiti artists from doing all this destruction?
I think it's a good plan, but you're going to have to do it every day because they'll come right back and put it up again. And they must spend hours doing it. Why can't you catch them, throw them in jail for 90 days?
That's a fair question that a lot of folks have. So I asked Portland Police about that today. A spokesman said they too are frustrated with the graffiti, but they only have so many resources. However, they are working some graffiti cases, they said, but they didn't say how many. They do hope to release more information on those cases soon, though. Apart from the throw them in jail option we just heard from Mark and Jack, several of you lobbed a few other suggestions our way. Stephen wrote to us that simply cleaning the graffiti is, quote, just flushing the money down the toilet. The solution would be to begin catching the people and make them repair or damage. No ifs or buts. If they refuse, garnish their wages or assets to compensate the community. One reason I no longer visit downtown is the way it looks coming out of the tunnel. Trashy, embarrassing.
I think we should look at hiring people of our police department or other security people that can catch these people at night or whenever they do it, so that we can have them clean up what they've done and make them accountable. It's just ridiculous the way our city has gone.
Now, there were a few of you who did not completely agree with my take or the opinions that we've shared here so far. Here's what Will thinks about Tim Boyle's donation.
I think he's just enabling the incompetence of our elected officials here. The city and county are awash in funds from the taxes that we've approved, and they can't seem to do anything that we, approved these taxes for.
And Jackie wrote in, "Thank you, Tim Boyle and the employees of ODOT for their work on graffiti cleanup. It takes us all and time, money, resources, and leadership to get the job done. I found Pat Doris's opinion to be a statement of grievance rather than an honest, constructive evaluation of the situation. The opinion at the end detracted from the story. Let the audience decide how they see the situation." All right, thanks for that, Jackie. I like to think that everyone who watches this show cares about our community, and the more input we have from folks who agree and disagree can help us all think more deeply about the issues that we're all facing. Coming up next on The Story, Oregon's signature climate program meant to reduce greenhouse gas emissions was just ruled invalid by the State Court of Appeals. But the reason why is being called procedural and technical. Environmental reporter Cale Williams explains just what's going on and what's next when The Story returns. Some big environmental news this week. An Oregon court ruled against the state's signature climate program. It's named the Climate Protection Program and was put in place in late 2021 to gradually reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the state's biggest polluters. But after just a few months, the state's largest natural gas utilities filed a lawsuit to try and block it. Yesterday, a court ruled the program is invalid, but not for the reasons the utilities had argued. Environmental reporter Cale Williams explains.
It's an unfortunate hiccup.
That's Jana Gastelum, Executive Director of the Oregon Environmental Council. And they're one of the parties arguing the Climate Protection Program should stay in place. The program aims to cut greenhouse gas emissions in the state by 90% by 2050. It's one of the most aggressive climate plans in the country. In 2022, gas utilities and industry groups sued to block the plan, saying the state didn't have the authority to implement it. On Wednesday, the Oregon Court of Appeals ruled the program was invalid because of an administrative error.
Really, it was about a procedural and technical issue. It's not really about the merits of the program. And so we're confident that things can be remedied. We just don't want to see too much delay.
Northwest Natural was one of the utilities trying to block the plan. In a statement, their spokesman David Roy said, "We are pleased with the court's decision. and we think it is an important step forward in being able to constructively address climate change. We believe in effective climate policy and remain committed to moving toward a low-carbon energy future. But Gastelum, she said those kinds of statements don't reflect the reality of the situation.
On one hand, they're claiming that they want to be supportive of climate programs, and then behind the scenes, they're constantly trying to undermine or delay progress. And that's not helpful for moving Oregon forward.
The folks at the Department of Environmental Quality, who oversee the plan, see this as more of a speed bump than a dead end. In a statement, the agency said they were disappointed with the ruling, but DEQ is confident the Environmental Quality Commission has authority to adopt and enforce the Climate Protection Program. And this does not deter us from developing climate programs that move Oregon towards meeting its climate goals. The biggest outcome of Wednesday's ruling could potentially be a delay in the program. And Gastelum, she said there's no time to waste.
This is the decisive decade for climate action. Any amount of delay keeps adding that pollution into the atmosphere.
Cale Williams, KGW News.
Thank you, Cale. The state has until the end of January to appeal, and the plan remains in effect at least until then. The state is working with the Department of Justice to figure out what their next move will be. And the bigger question of whether the state has the authority to implement the plan, well, that's still in front of the court and could be decided in the coming months. Still to come on the story. We're heading north to the Puget Sound, where a search team believes it has found a piece of history. Why experts think a shipwreck on the Sound floor could be from well over a century ago, and how new technology made the discovery possible. That's coming up when the story returns. A Seattle-based salvage company believes it has found the site of a historic shipwreck in Puget Sound. The SS Dix was part of the Mosquito Fleet, which carried passengers back and forth across the Sound. Erica Zuko from our sister station in Seattle explains how the discovery was made and what's next.
This crew aboard the Sea Blazer spends hours on the seas, searching underwater for signs of the past.
I mean, it's a great feeling to basically have that moment of discovery.
They chart the seas and troubleshoot technology to rig up a robot that can go deep and send back answers.
It allows us to see out about 100 meters in front of the robot, and then be able to just zero in on anything that we can find.
But Rockfish CEO Jeff Hummel says what they're looking for today is a more sobering find.
Today we're out imaging the Dix, which sank 117 years ago in the worst tragedy of Puget Sound.
The SS Dix was part of the Mosquito Fleet, a group of private transport vessels on Puget Sound. In 1906, it collided with a steam schooner near Alki Point, sinking quickly and killing at least 39 people. Its location remained a mystery for decades, even though the tragedy happened this close to the city of Seattle.
Fascinating that this wreck has been here unknown for 117 years, and you look at how close we are to everything.
Hummel says more than 10 years ago, a different company used sonar to image a wreck near Alki, but based on the shape, didn't think it was the Dix.
I'm gonna sneak by here quick, thanks.
His crew visited the site a few years later to test equipment they designed and kept going back. They took new sonar images and say they needed to be looked at differently.
And when you take the image and you flip it around and then you do the comparison of the features from a photograph to what we see on the sonar, that we get this perfect alignment of all the different features on the wreck.
Hummel says nothing has been taken from the site to be tested to further confirm if it is in fact the SS Dix.
Okay, here we go, guys.
At this point, his team's assessment
Pull it in a little bit.
Is based on sonar images. The crew dropped a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, more than 500 feet below, and we watched sonar images in a camera feed as they navigated through water and sediment.
Oh, there it is.
Sonar imaging eventually showed a vessel shape. The camera shows sea anemones Hummel says appear to be coating the vessel. The Northwest Shipwreck Alliance also found and won salvage rights to the SS Pacific, which sunk near Nia Bay in 1875 with people and gold on board. But there are differences here. One of the questions now is how to keep such a historically significant site safe and untouched. They're working on a number of avenues to try to seek legal protections. Hummel says they're asking for help from lawmakers to prevent interference at the site.
I would say release here.
Release, okay.
No.
They're also consulting historical societies and the state to look deeper into what they believe they've found, and are continuing their work in search of what else lies beneath.
All right, we're just like right out here in Elliott Bay, and this thing has been hidden here. There's more discoveries to be made.
Fascinating what they can find there. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember the story, our collective story, that never ends. And remember, we're not going to have a show all of next week because of the Christmas holiday, but we will be back on Tuesday, January 2nd. In the meantime, I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.